The story begins with a dark, mysterious pond. From within its depths, someone was struggling to escape. With great determination and effort, she finally managed to break free from the water's grasp. And that someone is our protagonist, Salvos. As she emerged onto the solid ground, she began to walk, wondering where she was and who she was. Just as she was trying to make sense of everything, a window popped up in front of her. It showed information about herself. Her name was Salvos, and she was a level 1 infant demon larva with the special ability to understand any language. She had 5 points in vitality, strength, endurance, wisdom, and agility. At first, Salvos was confused, but then she realized that the window was showing her own information, and she got even more confused. Then she looked around, hoping to find someone nearby, but there was no sign of any living creature for miles. All she could see was the vast, empty, white land. Then she started to crawl across the chalky and rocky floor, sliding between huge rocks for hours. Suddenly, something sharp poked her, causing pain, and she quickly moved away, unaware of what had poked her. Out of curiosity, she stared at the spiky rock and realized it was a hard, white object with spikes on it and a flat side. She then recognized it as a rock. As she looked around, she noticed several other rocks in the area. She wondered if they were all just ordinary rocks, or if there was something different about them. As she continuously stared at the rocks, another window popped up, surprising her once more. It informed her that her identification level had leveled up to level 2, and she had been awarded experience points for leveling up a general skill. Feeling clueless at first, an idea suddenly came to her mind. She thought that if she could identify objects with this skill, could she use it on the rocks? This thought got her very excited. Without wasting any time, she used the skill on the rocks, and the skill indicated that they were indeed just regular rocks with no other special information about them. Feeling disappointed that all the rocks turned out to be regular rocks despite their different sizes, spiky spikes, and colors, she attempted the identification skill multiple times on all the other rocks nearby, hoping for different results. Unfortunately, she was met with the same outcome each time. This made her on the verge of tears, but just as she was about to cry, another system notification appeared, shocking her once again. Curiously, she watched the system window, wondering what new skill she had acquired this time. As she moved forward while keeping an eye on the system window, she learned that she had reached level 2. She now had 5 stat points and 1 skill point. She wondered what she could do with these new abilities. Suddenly, she heard some noise and turned to her right. To her amazement, she saw something incredibly interesting: other living beings. It was the first time she had encountered beings like herself. Dozens of them were grouped together, aimlessly wandering through the empty landscape. They stood out against the white background with their vibrant colors, creating a stark contrast to the blandness of the surroundings. Most of them resembled her, but with slight variations in their forms. One had black and yellow spots on its back, while the rest of its body was red. Another had only a single eye on its face, unlike her 2 eyes. This made Salvos question if she was also like those rocks. Even though they were different in shape and color, they were still the same. Curious, she used her identification skill once again, and she discovered 2 things. First, all of them were at level 1. Second, despite belonging to the same species and subspecies, she herself was at level 2, which was higher than theirs, which was different from the rocks, where all the results were the same. This realization brought a sense of calmness to her mind. As Salvos was about to leave the group of infant demons, something caught her attention. She noticed another level 2 infant demon just like herself. She was shocked when the other demon raised her tentacles close to her face, and a small flame appeared from them. Salvos was bewildered and desperately wanted to learn how to do that. Using her identification skill, she discovered that the skill was called Magical Fire. It explained that the fire was created using mana and could be mastered through wisdom. Salvos checked her personal information and understood the system's intended meaning. Since she had 5 available stat points, she decided to allocate 1 point to her wisdom, increasing it to 6 points. As she did so, a spiderweb-like structure appeared above her, leaving her curious about its purpose. She closed her eyes and opened them again, but the structure suddenly disappeared. She felt devastated, wondering where it had gone. Eventually, she concluded that it might be related to her mana, but she couldn't produce any fire from her tentacles. She was disappointed. However, she didn't give up. Instead, she decided to follow the infant demon who could use magical fire, hoping to learn from her. Before we proceed further into the video, it took a lot of time and effort to make this video, so if you haven't liked this video and subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you all for supporting this channel. Now let's continue with the video. After hours of traveling, all the larvae that had been walking ahead suddenly came to a stop. For some reason, the larvae in front of Salvos were not moving forward, blocking her view. Determined, she maneuvered around them, trying to find a higher vantage point to see what they were investigating. However, what she witnessed was not something good. As she reached the front, she saw a tall level 5 infant larva, which made her feel scared. Then, the level 2 infant demon who could use magic fire stepped forward, scared but determined to fight. She activated her magical fire skill instantly. Salvos became excited, thinking that now she would save everyone like a hero, and that her magical fire skill would be powerful. But before she could finish her sentence, the level 5 larva slammed his head into the level 2 larva, shattering her into pieces. Salvos was stunned and speechless. Every larva stood in a line, filled with anger, and started attacking the large level 5 larva. However, the result was the same. He killed them with a single blow. The level 5 larva proved to be incredibly fierce and easily overpowered them, causing their blood to splatter helplessly. Observing this, Salvos became afraid and realized that she had no chance of winning against him alone. She believed that they might have a fighting chance if they worked together. Salvos remembered the larva with a single eye and started searching for him. However, he and many others had already escaped, leaving their comrades behind. The level 5 larva continued to rampage mercilessly, executing the smaller ones. His rampage was so fierce that he leveled up to level 6 and grew even bigger. Fear spread through the air, and even Salvos started to lose hope. She realized that running was the only option to survive, so she and the remaining larvae started running. However, the level 5 larva was faster than them. In an instant, it caught up to them, slamming its head and crushing many infant larvae instantly. Salvos was thrown to the ground feeling helpless. She thought hard about how to defeat the powerful larva. That's when she noticed the blue path emerging again, creating the web-like structure. She tried to open the system window to understand its meaning, but her focus was interrupted when another larva was thrown at her, causing her to fall to the ground. Despite the pain, she realized that the web-like structure had something to do with wisdom. She used all her stat points to increase her wisdom to 10, and suddenly she could see the web-like structure more clearly. With great concentration, Salvos focused on creating fire. Suddenly, the blurry web-like structure became engulfed in flames. She dashed towards the level 5 larva, covered in fire like a meteor, and made a huge hole in its chest, instantly killing it. Meanwhile, a red larva watched in awe, having narrowly escaped death just moments before. As she fell to the ground, she felt a surge of satisfaction. She had finally mastered magical fire. Not only that, but she also leveled up 3 times, gaining 2 new skills. Her current level was now 5, and she had skill points and stat points to allocate. Additionally, she obtained the Fire Strike skill. Salvos was amazed by her incredible achievement, unable to find words to express her progress. However, her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed a red larva staring at her. Fear trembled through her as she worried that this larva might harm her. Summoning her courage, she asked, "What do you want?" Salvos kept her focus on the red larva, waiting anxiously for a response. The red larva continued to gaze back at her without showing any emotions. Suddenly, its eyes sparkled as it observed Salvos. Curious, Salvos moved her head, and she realized that the red larva's eyes followed her every movement. "Why aren't you doing anything? Are you just a rock?" Salvos asked once again, growing frustrated at the lack of a reply. With no answer from the red larva, she decided to walk away. After her victory over the large demon, her main goal was to become stronger and reach higher level. She wandered across the land for days. Along her journey, she encountered wild infant demons who attacked her without any reason. She made a rule that she would defend herself and defeat anyone who attacked her first. Salvos didn't particularly mind that other demons kept attacking her because defeating them only made her stronger. However, there was one small problem. She was being followed. Just as she was about to engage in a battle with a wild demon, the red larva suddenly appeared and snatched the target away from her. At first, Salvos didn't mind, since this larva was in the company of others who weren't wild, and it didn't seem like he intended to harm her. So she allowed the red larva to accompany her on her journey. However, every time Salvos got into a fight, the red larva would jump in and steal her kills. Even if he didn't finish them off completely, Salvos would get less experience because of his involvement. This made Salvos increasingly annoyed as she checked her system and saw her gains shrinking. She believed in her own fighting abilities and didn't feel the need for anyone's help. so she tried to keep her distance from the red larva. When it came to distributing her stat points, Salvos focused on raising her agility and wisdom. But unfortunately, she noticed that the red larva was also increasing his agility. No matter where she went, the red larva kept following her, making Salvos exhausted from his constant presence. Even though she wanted to be left alone, she found herself concentrating more on her agility to avoid being with him. However, deep down, she knew that wisdom would be more helpful in battles. Sometimes she managed to lose him, only for him to somehow find her again. This made her feel even more frustrated. At one point, she thought about getting rid of the red larva by hurting him, but she quickly realized that such actions would make her no different from the large demon she defeated. The mere thought of becoming a wild demon scared her, and she desperately didn't want to turn into one. So instead of harming him, Salvos decided to find ways to avoid him altogether. Suddenly, Salvos and the red larva came across 5 other larvae, with a larger black one standing before them. Salvos wasn't sure if these larvae were wild or tame. Since they didn't attack her, she assumed they were probably tamed and decided to approach them. When she checked their levels, she saw that the black larva was at level 9, while the others were at level 6 or below. Salvos herself had reached level 8 by now. Surprisingly, the level 9 larva pointed directly at Salvos, leaving her completely clueless about his intentions. Salvos thought that maybe he wanted someone to join his team and offered the red larva to him, thinking it would be a way to get rid of the red larva. But the black larva shook his head in disappointment, indicating that he didn't want the red larva. Poor red larva, nobody wanted him. Once again, the black larva pointed at Salvos, indicating that he only wanted her. However, Salvos still couldn't understand what black larva was trying to communicate. Suddenly, without warning, the black larva launched an attack, trying to stab Salvos and causing blood to splatter. She was confused, unsure if the attack was intentional or accidental. But before she could react, the black larva prepared another attack, about to hit her. In that moment, the red larva appeared and attacked the black larva, landing punches on his face. Seeing this, Salvos realized that the red larva had come to her aid and that the black larva wanted to hurt her. Although she wanted to help, fear overwhelmed her, paralyzing her body. The red larva fought valiantly on his own, battling the black larva with equal strength. However, the encounter took an unexpected turn when a green, one-eyed larva intervened. He cast a skill and a rock formed, which struck the red larva on the head, causing him to panic. The red larva looked at the other 4 larvae, realizing they were the source of the attack. These 3 larvae immediately started attacking him together, leaving the black larva and Salvos alone. Salvos felt fear gripping her as she watched the events unfold. She looked at the black larva and finally understood that these larvae were not mindless like the wild demons. However, she also realized that they didn't see her as a friend, but as something they could kill to level up and become stronger. While they continued their relentless fighting, Salvos turned her attention to the level 9 larva. It was clear that this larva wanted to defeat Salvos all by himself and gain the experience. The black larva prepared to attack her with his sharp pincers, but she dodged the attack and quickly used her magical fire skill, delivering a solid punch to his stomach that caused him pain. She realized that she was faster than her opponent. Then, Salvos noticed the one-eyed larva getting ready to use his magic rock attack. Since Salvos had put most of her points into agility, she easily avoided the attack. This made Salvos annoyed with the one-eyed larva, and she considered attacking him first. However, the black larva charged at her, reminding her that she needed to deal with him first before going after the one-eyed larva. The one-eyed larva prepared to attack Salvos again, while the black larva challenged her to fight him. Upon witnessing all of this, Salvos felt a surge of anger. The one-eyed larva prepared its magic attack, while Salvos activated her fire conjuration skill. The intensity of her flames made the black larva feel threatened, and as she prepared her attack, the black larva covered its face in a defensive manner. However, to his surprise, her attack was just a distraction. She threw her flame beside the black horn larva and dashed toward the one-eyed larva. In response, the one-eyed larva unleashed its magic rock attack, but Salvos effortlessly dodged it and retaliated with a devastating punch of magical fire, instantly defeating and killing the one-eyed larva. After catching her breath, Salvos looked at the flames and thought about the red larva. He was stronger than the others, but was starting to get outnumbered. Suddenly, an idea popped into her mind, but before she could do anything, the black larva lunged at her with his fangs. She quickly jumped upward, avoiding his attack. In an instant, she dashed toward the other larvas, crashing into them and sending them flying backward. Then, the remaining 4 larvas tried to attack her all at once, but just as they were about to strike, the black larva intervened and killed one of the larvas who was trying to harm Salvos. Now, Salvos was certain that the black larva wanted to kill her for himself so that he could level up on his own. Then, a devastating fight began between Salvos and the black larva. Salvos activated her fire conjuring skill, and both of them exchanged powerful blows. The battle went on for hours. Salvos was tired and hurt. She could barely muster enough energy for another fire strike, but unlike the black larva, she had a friend. Suddenly, the red larva punched the black larva in the face, sending him rolling on the ground. The black larva was selfish, so he had killed his own companion to gain all the experience points for himself. The remaining larva was defeated by the red larva. Now, it was a 2 versus 1 situation. Salvos and the red larva charged up their attacks and simultaneously delivered a heavy blow to the black larva, causing him to fly upwards and slam to the ground, getting killed. Breathing heavily, Salvos and the red larva both collapsed on the ground, exhausted from the battle. Then, a system window popped up, letting Salvos know that she had learned a new skill called Rest. She had also leveled up twice and was now at level 9. Looking at the window, she realized that she was close to reaching level 10. She had a feeling that something important would happen when she reached that level, but she wasn't sure what exactly. As a gentle breeze blew by, Salvos and the red larva peacefully rested after their intense fight. Salvos was grateful for her new skill, which helped her recover quickly from battles with the horned demons and their minions. She would have preferred to avoid the fight altogether, but it had helped her level up. She noticed changes in her abilities and stats, especially her skills, which had improved. Now, at level 9, she had grown larger and even developed new limbs that she didn't have at level 1. She might have become as big as the large demon that first attacked her when she met the others. Salvos was certain that she would continue to evolve and change as she leveled up. She believed that something important awaited her when she reached level 10. She also felt grateful to the red larva because he had saved her life. If he hadn't intervened when the blackhorn demon attacked, she would have been dead. Because of this, she no longer minded that he was following her. Suddenly, the red larva winked at her teasingly. It seemed like he was joking around and having fun. They continued their journey together with the red larva faithfully following Salvos. She was grateful for his help and had accepted him as her companion. They fought side by side, defeating many other demons and leveling up together. Then the scene shifts and we see terrifying-looking demons standing on his balcony, overlooking a world filled with darkness. The demon turned away from the unsettling view and made his way back to his grand throne. As he walked, every other demon in the land bowed their heads in submission. With a commanding voice, he declared that the time had come to deal with the foolish ones who dared to enter his domain. He warned them that only destruction and chaos awaited those who dared to challenge him. The demons listened intently, knowing their king's words were to be heeded. Once seated on his imposing throne, the demon king revealed his terrifying appearance. He possessed long, sharp nails, pointy horns atop his head, and a strong, masculine form. His eyes glowed a menacing red as he issued orders for the survivors to be found and brought before him. He promised rewards for those who faithfully carried out his will. Hearing their king's command, thousands of demons rushed outside, causing the very ground to tremble beneath their powerful strides. Their mission was to locate and capture any survivors who had dared to enter their land. Then the scene shifts, and we see they were walking near a cliff. They suddenly heard an unfamiliar noise coming from below. Curiosity got the better of them, and they peeked over the edge of the cliff. What they saw was unexpected and terrifying. A group of angry and fierce demons was marching forward with oppressed-looking larvas following behind them. Salvos had never seen anything like it before. For the first time, they heard a deep voice coming from a demon with large horns, sharp teeth, and bright red eyes. The demon warned everyone to keep moving and threatened a terrible death for anyone who disobeyed. Salvos and the red larva watched intently, trying to understand what was happening. Then the red larva caught sight of something and drew Salvos' attention to it. It was the one-eyed larva accompanied by captive larvas who were being forced to follow. Salvos immediately recognized the one-eyed larva as the larva who had escaped during their fight with the tall demon larva. Suddenly, some of the lesser demons in the group rebelled, but the higher demon with the large horns swiftly killed them all with one blow. Amidst the chaos, the one-eyed larva tried to make a desperate escape, but a spear of flames was launched, hitting him in the stomach and instantly killing him. The higher demon declared that he had warned them about trying to escape, and he used the one-eyed larva's fate as a lesson for the remaining survivors. He cruelly ordered them to move forward, making it clear that they could never run from him. Salvos and the red larva carefully moved along, keeping a safe distance from the wild demons below. The horrifying scene of the demons effortlessly executing the larvas filled them with deep unease. Suddenly, one of the demons glanced upward, but Salvos and the red larva managed to hide themselves, trembling with fear. As the higher demons moved farther away, Salvos and the red larva took a moment to calm themselves. They looked back at the cliff and noticed something burning with magical flames. It looked like a strange object, resembling a spear. Salvos recognized it as a magical item and quickly slid down towards it. The red larva followed her, feeling anxious. Salvos approached the spear and used her identification skill to learn more about it. However, initially nothing came up, leaving her confused about its origins and purpose. She tried again, focusing deeply on the spear. Suddenly, a system notification appeared, indicating that her identification skill had leveled up from 3 to 4. She was awarded experience for leveling up her general skill. The system informed Salvos that the spear was a medium-grade weapon. It was made of magical flames and allowed the wielder to inflict additional fire damage on their enemies. This revelation sparked an idea in Salvos' mind. She realized that she could combine this weapon with her fire strike skill to enhance her attacks and make them even more powerful. As Salvos was about to grab the spear, a loud roar echoed behind them. They turned around and saw a fierce beast approaching slowly. The system notified them that it was a level 15 hellhound. Fear gripped Salvos and the red larva as they trembled in the presence of the mighty hellhound. Its sharp teeth were exposed as it charged towards them. The numerical difference between them seemed overwhelming, and Salvos had no idea how to face such a formidable opponent. To her, it looked like a highly evolved demon. The hellhound roared ferociously, closing in on Salvos and the red larva with lightning speed. Just as it was about to strike, Salvos swiftly dodged its attack. She activated her fire conjuring skill and landed a strong blow to the hellhound's stomach. However, her strike didn't even leave a scratch on the beast. Undeterred, the hellhound let out another thunderous roar and raised its sharp claws, attempting to claw at Salvos. Somehow she managed to avoid its attack, providing an opening for the red larva to launch a counterattack, inflicting a small amount of damage on the hellhound. Now the hellhound turned its attention to the red larva, focusing its aggression on the smaller creature. Taking advantage of the distraction, Salvos unleashed a barrage of magical fire at the hellhound. With the hellhound caught off guard, Salvos and the red larva attacked simultaneously, leaving the beast unsure of its intended target. However, before they could act, the hellhound struck Salvos, sending her crashing into a corner. Then, it unleashed a vicious scratch upon the red larva. Salvos realized that her companion couldn't match the overwhelming strength of the hellhound. Looking around, she spotted the spear and an idea formed in her mind. Despite the scorching heat, Salvos summoned all her strength to pull out the spear. She closed her eyes, enduring the burning sensation and the spear's resistance. Finally, she succeeded in dislodging the spear. Glancing at her wounded companion under the relentless assault of the hellhound, Salvos felt frustration surge within her. She commanded the hellhound to stop its attack on her companion, and unleashed her fire strike to drive the beast away. As Salvos and the hellhound locked eyes, tension filled the air. Salvos tightly gripped the spear engulfed in flames, ready to defend herself. The hellhound crouched low, preparing to pounce and attack. In the middle, the red larva lay wounded and helpless. With a mighty roar, the hellhound leaped toward Salvos. Acting swiftly, she summoned her fire strike skill to counter the attack. Despite getting scratched on her stomach, Salvos stood her ground and defended herself. As the hellhound readied itself for another strike, it charged toward Salvos with a thunderous roar, mouth wide open. Seizing the opportunity, Salvos struck the hellhound in the mouth with the spear. Combining the spear's power with her fire strike, she delivered a devastating blow that instantly killed the hellhound. The hellhound collapsed to the ground, defeated by Salvos' relentless assault. A congratulatory system window appeared, praising her victory over the formidable foe. Salvos leveled up twice, reaching level 11. She felt a surge of satisfaction at her triumph. However, the elation was quickly replaced by intense pain and exhaustion. She sank to the ground, gasping for breath, her body filled with agony. As Salvos struggled to catch her breath, her vision became blurry. In her weakened state, she saw the red larva rushing towards her in a panic. Just as she closed her eyes, something mysterious happened. The system notification informed her that evolution was now available. Salvos had the chance to evolve from being an infant demon into a lesser demon. The concept of evolution was a bit confusing to her, but the system explained that she had fulfilled the requirements for 5 different subspecies evolutions. Surrounded by darkness, Salvos was presented with several system windows, each displaying a different subspecies option. The choices included Fiend, Fire Fiend, Hellhound, Imp, and Zealous Imp. Feeling uncertain, Salvos examined the shadowy images of the lesser demons. None of them felt quite right to her except for the Zealous Imp. With determination, she declared, "This is me," and chose the Zealous Imp as her evolved form. She closed her eyes and experienced a floating sensation as the system notification confirmed the successful completion of her evolution. When Salvos opened her eyes, she noticed that her vision had become sharper than before. As she looked at the red larva, even he seemed shocked for some reason. Curiously, Salvos examined her hands and was taken aback by what she saw. Her nails had grown long and had a feminine appearance, but what surprised her even more was when she spoke. Her voice had transformed into a lovely tone that she had never heard before. Salvos had transformed from a cute larva into a stunning female elf. She had flowing white hair, piercing yellow eyes, a small but sharp horn, and an alluring, slender figure. Another system window appeared, reminding her that she had evolved into a lesser demon. With this transformation, she gained 2 additional skill slots and 3 skill points. This allowed her to unlock new abilities, such as Double Step, Fire Blast, and General Tool Proficiency. Salvos sat on the ground, her eyes fixed on her new appearance. She ran her fingers over her transformed skin, feeling a sense of bewilderment wash over her. Struggling to stand on her elongated legs, she tried to make sense of her situation. It was then that she realized she had evolved into a lesser demon. Her gaze fell upon the red larva, who trembled in fear and confusion. Determined to reassure him, she introduced herself, saying, "It's me, your companion." However, the red larva continued to crawl away, sweating and trembling. Salvos sat down to level their heights and extended her arms towards the red larva, offering a friendly gesture. Eventually, the red larva approached and shook hands with her. Suddenly, another hellhound appeared from behind, surprising both of them. Salvos looked around, feeling annoyed. Upon checking the system, she discovered that this hellhound was only a level 13 demon. She grabbed her spear, activating her passive skill, General Tool Proficiency. With determination, she faced the hellhound, ordering the red larva to stay back. The hellhound was furious and ready to attack, but then, to their surprise, several more hellhounds emerged, varying in levels and sizes. Despite the overwhelming numbers, Salvos fearlessly prepared to confront them. One wolf lunged at her, and she immediately used her Fire Strike skill, striking the hellhound with her spear. She first defeated a level 13 spike hellhound, earning additional experience points. But the battle wasn't over. 3 more hellhounds approached her, and Salvos swung her spear, hoping to intimidate them. However, the hellhounds became even more enraged and continued their advance. Then, Salvos pointed her finger at a hellhound and cast her new skill, Fire Blast. The power of her attack turned the wolf into ashes. Salvos then grabbed the red larva and held him tightly. In an instant, Salvos leaped over the hellhounds using her double step skill, running as fast as she could. However, the hellhounds pursued relentlessly. While running, Salvos maintained a smile, urging the red larva to hold on and not let go. She didn't want to leave him behind. Glancing behind her, she used Fire Strike to attack the chasing hellhounds, continuing to run while keeping the red larva close. Eventually, she spotted a cliff and considered that jumping might help them lose the hellhounds. But their plan was interrupted when a large foot stomped down, blocking their path. A massive hellbeast, a level 22 demon, stood before them. The hellbeast growled menacingly, and Salvos retaliated with a fire blast. However, the hellbeast emerged unscathed from the flames. The hellbeast struck Salvos, and she attempted to block the attack with her spear. But the hellbeast's strength overwhelmed her, slamming her into a corner. She closed her eyes, feeling intense pain, yet still held on to the red larva. When she opened her eyes, she was surprised to see the hellbeast attacking the hellhounds instead. Seizing the opportunity, she ran as fast as she could while the hellbeast was distracted. The hellbeast crushed the hellhounds with its massive foot as Salvos fled with the red larva. Unbeknownst to her, the red larva had also leveled up from a level 9 to a level 10 demon larva. The red larva flinched upon realizing this, and soon lost consciousness. The scene shifted. Salvos and the larva lay on the ground, panting from their escape. Salvos took a moment to catch her breath, relieved to be away from their enemies. Checking her system, she discovered that she had become a level 10 zealous imp. She had gained 5 stat points and 3 skill points. The system notifications indicated that she had leveled up from 10 to 12. Standing up, Salvos looked back and assured the larva that there was no need to be afraid, because she would protect it. However, before she could finish her sentence, something unexpected happened. Instead of the red larva, a man now stood behind her, with long hair, red skin, and elf ears. He greeted her kindly with a smile. The man towered over Salvos, making her seem like his little sister. She was clueless about who this man was. A system window appeared, revealing that the man in front of her was a level 10 fiend. With a significant height difference, Salvos began to suspect that this man was the evolved form of the red larva, especially after she noticed only a pool of black ink where the had been. Studying the man intently, Salvos readied her fist to attack, her teeth gritted in determination. Surprisingly, the man burst into laughter, further confusing Salvos. Angrily, Salvos questioned why he was laughing and demanded him to stop. The man replied that her reaction was so hilarious that he couldn't help but laugh, even without knowing why. The man introduced himself as Heke, and they laughed and talked happily for some time. Salvos joyfully expressed that she had always considered him her companion and hadn't known he had a name. Heke responded that indeed he did have a name, and Salvos was his leader. Salvos felt puzzled as to why Heke saw her as a leader. He reminded him that he had followed her after she saved him from that tall larva. With a dumbfounded expression, Salvos asked if that was the reason why he had been following her. She had always thought he was trying to steal her levels by killing her. Heke replied that he would never do such a thing. Salvos then asked if the reason Heke followed that level 2 larva was because she had saved him at some point. Hearing this, Heke's face turned sad, and he explained that he followed the larva because they were like a family. Heke revealed that he found himself in an inky black liquid, born alongside others, and only Salvos joined them later on. Heke felt a sense of sadness as he realized that the others were no longer there, leaving only him and Salvos. Observing Heke's sadness, Salvos tapped his hard abs to ask if he was okay. Heke honestly replied that he was genuinely sad. He felt upset that he had been grouped with others, his companions like Salvos, but they had either died or been captured by wild demons. Salvos still didn't fully understand Heke's feelings at that moment. While she wasn't entirely sure about the exact reason for his sadness, seeing Heke in this state made Salvos feel sad herself, and she didn't like it. In an attempt to comfort him, she held Heke's hand and reassured him. "The others may be gone, but I'm still here. You're the one who said that I'm your leader," Salvos stated. This realization seemed to dawn on Heke, and Salvos continued, "As long as you follow me, you won't be alone." A wide smile brightened Salvos' face as she spoke these words. Heke responded with a slight smile and nodded in agreement. Walking together, Salvos told Heke not to be sad anymore. She assured him that wherever they went, they would be together, fighting side by side and leveling up together. Suddenly, they noticed a giant spider approaching them. Heke agreed with Salvos' words, expressing his belief that as long as they were together, they would be fine. The spider attacked, and Heke blocked its attack with his arm. Salvos swiftly rushed towards the spider, slashing its abdomen with her spear combined with her fire strike skill. Heke joined the fight, grabbing one of the spider's legs and twisting it. Salvos unleashed her fire blast, striking the spider, and then jumped to stab its head with her spear. The spider screamed in agony, spitting out green blood. Together, they successfully defeated the giant spider, and both of them leveled up. Heke had reached level 13. As they prepared to leave, Salvos felt slightly irritated that Heke had leveled up twice, while she had only leveled up once. She jokingly remarked that it was unfair for her that he was leveling up faster. Heke reminded her that she was already at level 15, which made it harder for her to level up. Salvos chuckled and was about to say something, but then their system windows appeared simultaneously, surprising them both. They conversed and realized that they had received the same notification, now entering the Demon King's domain. They continued walking for a long time, but they found nothing. Heke suggested leaving the place, but Salvos insisted that they had barely explored the area, and that it was a new territory where they could level up and become stronger. Heke expressed his loyalty, stating that Salvos was his leader, and that he would follow her orders. However, he admitted that he had a bad feeling about the place. Understanding his concern, Salvos turned around to go back the way they came. Heke asked if she was okay with his idea, as he didn't want to force her. Salvos completely agreed with him, explaining that she had only wanted to see what made this place different, but now she suspected that it was nothing but danger. She had a hunch that this might be where the tall demon had gone, and if they were to encounter them, these demons would either force them to follow, or worse, try to kill them. Salvos smiled and told Heke that she didn't want that to happen. Heke smiled slightly, glad that Salvos understood his concerns. As they were about to leave, something unexpected occurred. Heke was shocked as he noticed something unfamiliar. Someone was approaching them. When they could clearly see the person, it was a man with a bulkier body, ash-colored skin, and the same elf-like ears as Salvos and Heke. He stomped like a giant and clanged his weapon on the ground. Upon arriving in front of them, he declared, "What's this?" It seems responding to that contract call was not a bad idea after all. 2 survivors and lesser demons at that, that's quite a feat, with a smile on his face. Salvos and Heke readied themselves for a potential fight in case this man intended to harm them. At this point, Heke couldn't see the man's level, so he asked Salvos. Salvos could clearly see the man's level and informed Heke that he was a level 42 Daejeon. She believed that they couldn't fight a Daejeon at their current R. The Daejeon grinned, showcasing his sharp teeth, and boasted about being a greater demon, an evolution above Salvos. She struggled to comprehend the power he possessed over her. Holding her spear tightly, Salvos spoke up, telling the Daejeon that they were not wild demons. She explained that they didn't want to fight him, and there was no reason for them to engage in battle. Salvos politely requested the Daejeon to leave them alone, and promised that they wouldn't cause him any trouble. However, the Daejeon argued that those wild demons Salvos mentioned were not different from him and Salvos herself. He believed that they were all selfish creatures driven by their instincts to kill and level up. Annoyed, Salvos retorted that even if the Daejeon defeated them, the experience he would gain would be insignificant. "You have nothing to gain from fighting us," she shouted. The Daejeon slammed his weapon on the ground and disagreed, asserting that Salvos was wrong. He revealed that he knew Salvos had developed her identification skill to a high level, an unexpected ability for leveling up. Salvos was shocked by the Daejeon's knowledge about her. Noticing Heek's size, the Daejeon speculated that he was not just an ordinary fiend. He deduced that Heek had undergone an uncommon evolution, possibly even a rare one. The Daejeon declared, "Now come with me, lesser demons, to greet your king." Salvos and Heek were unsure about what to do, considering the vast difference in levels between them and the Daejeon. They believed they didn't stand a chance, so Salvos decided it was better to follow the Daejeon for now. However, before complying, Salvos wanted to know what the Daejeon intended to do with them if they followed him. "You must be mistaken, imp." "That wasn't a request," the Daejeon replied, surprising Salvos. Without warning, the Daejeon attacked them with his massive weapon. Salvos and Heek swiftly dodged, but Salvos stumbled and fell to the ground. The Daejeon approached her and coldly informed her that he would drag their half-dead bodies to his lair if necessary. He planned to fulfill the contract and receive great rewards from King Rignorix, the Demon King, for capturing both a fiend and an imp. "I am not just an imp, I am Salvos," she shouted defiantly, casting her fire blast and launching it at the Daejeon. The Daejeon smiled as he conjured his burning haze, creating a cloud of purple ashes that surrounded him. Salvos used her spear to block the Daejeon's attack. The Daejeon remarked that Salvos having a fire creation skill was unexpected, indicating that she held more value than he initially thought. With determined steps, he approached Salvos, who realized that the purple cloud was made of ashes. The Daejeon was incredibly fast, and Salvos could sense his relentless pursuit. Just as he was about to strike Salvos from behind, she managed to evade in the nick of time. The Daejeon smiled menacingly, taunting Salvos that she couldn't run forever. To his surprise, Heke launched a crushing blow towards the Daejeon, aiming for a powerful punch. But despite the strength behind Heke's attack, the Daejeon remained unharmed and called it feeble. Determined to demonstrate his own strength, the Daejeon clenched his fist and delivered a devastating punch to Heke, causing him to be sent flying and vomit blood. Salvos worriedly looked at Heke, wanting to rush to his side. However, the Daejeon blocked her path, his hand reaching for her face. Anger surged within Salvos as she clenched her teeth. She unleashed a fire strike, combining it with her spear, and attacked the Daejeon. The Daejeon, familiar with the weapon, caught it with his bare hand. He slammed his weapon on the ground, causing the earth to tremble and shatter. Salvos swiftly jumped back, avoiding the powerful force unleashed by the Daejeon. The Daejeon now had a wound on his hand, and blood dripped from it. He realized that Salvos wielded a medium-grade weapon, and he was puzzled about how a lesser demon like her had obtained it. However, Salvos had no intention of answering his questions. Filled with anger, the Daejeon raised his weapon high and unleashed his tremendous skill. The sphere of ash and cinder, a swirling circle formed above him, which he planned to use as a projectile to attack Salvos. Since he believed that Salvos didn't want to come with him, he decided to eliminate her and take Heke instead. For the Daejeon, having one captive was better than none. Salvos quickly dodged the attack from the Daejeon and used her double-step skill to create distance between them. Even though she managed to escape the assault, she could still feel the pain lingering. It became clear to her that if she hadn't used double steps to evade the attack, it could have ended her life. However, Salvos knew that she couldn't rely on double steps every time. She realized that the Daejeon would be prepared to strike again, and next time she might not be able to dodge it. Just as the Daejeon was ready to deliver a fatal blow, a sudden appearance disrupted the scene. Heke emerged and boldly rode onto the Daejeon's shoulder, grabbing his head tightly. "Escape! You can do it!" Heke shouted to Salvos, urging her to get away. Salvos hesitated, not wanting to abandon her companion. But before she could react, the Daejeon managed to break free from Heke's grasp and struck him forcefully. Heke was sent flying, and Salvos, feeling a mix of guilt and regret, fled the scene, apologizing silently for leaving her companion behind with their enemy. Then the scene shifts, and we see the Jinn carrying Heke on his shoulder, somewhere in the distance. Blood drops fall from Heke's wounds, creating a trail behind them. After a while, Salvos found herself outside the Demon King's domain. She felt a deep sadness for the fact that Heke had sacrificed himself to save her, while she had chosen to leave him behind to be taken by the Demon King Rignorix. Now alone, walking on the white surface, she questioned her decision and wondered if it was the right thing to do. She had been alone for the majority of her existence. With only a brief time spent with Heke, she wasn't sure what to do next. The thought of leveling up, which had been her primary focus, felt uncertain now. She pondered if there was more to her life than simply evolving. She raised her hand and clenched it, determined to find a better reason for her actions. Salvos admitted that she enjoyed leveling up, feeling a sense of completion with each evolution. But she understood that if she were to act solely on her instincts to fight and evolve, she would become no different from the wild demons she had encountered. Heke was her companion, the one who recognized her as Salvos. While they might not always be together, that recognition was important to her. She wanted to acknowledge him in return. Standing outside the Demon King's domain, Salvos encountered an enemy similar to herself, but defeated it on her own. She turned back and stood before the entrance, looking at it with determination. Meanwhile, blood splattered as she stepped into it, following Heke's trail. She ventured into Lucerna's lair, tracking Heke's blood until it led her to him. Salvos noticed Lucerna at a table, preoccupied with something while Heke remained locked up behind him. There was a pentacle in the middle of them. Suddenly, Lucerna slammed his hand on the table in frustration. Angered by the fact that Salvos possessed a more powerful weapon than him, Salvos overheard the conversation between Lucerna and Heke. Salvos felt the need to help Heke while Lucerna was occupied with his contract. As Lucerna turned away, Salvos swiftly moved to Heke's side. Heke was surprised to see her there. Suddenly, Lucerna shouted in frustration as he faced what seemed like a mirror with a bright blue light. He continued speaking to himself while Salvos tried to assist Heke in escaping. Salvos kept an eye on Lucerna to avoid getting caught. Eventually, Lucerna called Heke, signaling that it was time for him to meet the king. Using the spear, Salvos aimed to break the lock. With a successful strike, she opened it, causing a noise that caught Lucerna's attention. He screamed in anger as Salvos and Heke made their getaway. Lucerna cast his sphere of ash and cinder, while Salvos hurled the spear at him, hitting his shoulder. Lucerna cried out in pain, blood splattering. The sphere of ash and cinder headed toward Salvos and Heke, but they managed to dodge it. Lucerna clenched the spear, pulling it out of his shoulder. He confronted Salvos directly, and she instructed Heke to go ahead. Lucerna attacked her, but she leaped to avoid his strike. Salvos summoned her magical fire and fought to regain her balance. She unleashed her fiery skill against Lucerna, but to her surprise, he remained unscathed by the flames. Lucerna, fueled by rage, cast his burning haze and launched an attack at Salvos, striking her and causing her to fall to the ground. Lucerna approached her, preparing to end her life. Meanwhile, Heke called out Salvos' name, deeply concerned for her well-being. Despite the pain she was experiencing, Salvos exerted all her strength to rise. At that critical moment, Lucerna readied another skill. But before he could strike, Salvos utilized her double step and pushed Lucerna into a nearby portal. She propelled herself into the air, but Lucerna managed to grab her foot. Salvos desperately tried to hold onto the ground, but Lucerna's grip was strong. Heke, determined to help Salvos, sprinted towards them. Salvos extended her hand, urging Heke to grab hold of it, but unfortunately, it was too late. Salvos was completely pulled into the portal, leaving Heke alone by Lucerna's lamp. Salvos' system window appeared, notifying her that she was leaving Lucerna's lamp and the Demon King's domain. Another notification indicated that she was entering the mortal realm, leaving behind Nexius's netherworld. As they fell into the underground, both Salvos and Lucerna landed in a pentacle. To their surprise, they found several men wearing black robes and masks, their faces hidden. With a confident smile, one of the men addressed Lucerna as the Almighty Lucerna, Greater Demon of the Netherland, and expressed their plea. However, his expression changed to confusion upon seeing Salvos standing alongside Lucerna. Feeling bewildered by the situation, Salvos observed the unmasked man, who turned out to be a level 45 cultist. The man smirked knowingly, and with delight he exclaimed, "It worked!" The man seemed pleased with the successful summoning, claiming that they had offered a virgin sacrifice. He declared that Lucerna and Salvos were the demons they had summoned. He stated that he had fulfilled the terms of their contract by providing the sacrifice, and now demanded their assistance. His request centered around a town called Dawnwind. He revealed that he had once been infatuated with Lucy. As the cultist continued his narrative, Salvos noticed that the choker around Lucerna's neck had shattered. Disregarding this, the cultist went on to share his personal story. Filled with excitement, he had planned to ask Lucy out. However, his dreams were shattered when a group of gold-ranked adventurers, led by a warrior named Nolan, arrived in town. Lucy fell in love with Nolan and eloped with him, leaving the cultist heartbroken. As Salvos listened to the man's story, tears filled his eyes and his voice trembled with emotion. However, Salvos couldn't understand any of his sentiments, or why he was sharing the story. The man suddenly screamed, filled with hatred, and a burning desire for revenge against Nolan and his band of adventurers. He called upon Gin Lucerna, pleading for the powerful Lucerna to destroy Nolan and make him pay for what he had done. Salvos, feeling overwhelmed and confused, began searching for an escape route. She spotted an exit, but 3 lower-level cultists stood in her way. One of them interrupted the level 45 cultist's rant, reminding him of their true goal, seeking revenge against King Hale for his oppressive taxation. The level 45 cultists dismissed their goal, claiming that not even a mighty demon like Lucerna could destroy the king. Suddenly, Gin Lucerna erupted in anger, his restraining ring broken. He unleashed his fury upon the cultists, attacking them one by one with his spear. The cultists tried to remind Lucerna of their contract, but the powerful demon ignored him. Witnessing the chaos unfold, Salvos saw her chance to escape. Seizing the moment, she leaped out of the pentacle, casting a terrifying fire strike that scared away the cultist attempting to block her path. The cultists ordered their followers to stop Salvos, but their commands fell on deaf ears as Lucerna turned his wrath upon them. Meanwhile, Salvos made her escape, narrowly avoiding a spear thrown by a cultist. Now facing 3 cultists blocking her way to the exit, they attacked her with magic and weapons. In response, Salvos unleashed another fire strike, defeating 2 of the cultists and leaving only 1 standing. The last remaining cultist lunged at her with a spear, but Salvos retaliated with a powerful fire strike, breaking the spear and leaving the cultist defenseless. Unbeknownst to her, 2 other cultists had sneaked up behind her and slashed at her back. Despite the pain, she fought back, unleashing a devastating fire blast that defeated both of them. She continued running, getting closer to the exit with every step. Finally, she leaped out of the cave and into a forest, dashing away without looking back. However, she stumbled over a rock and fell to the ground. She realized she had managed to lose her pursuers. As Salvos checked notifications about her increasing attributes, exhaustion overcame her and she passed out. She was awakened by a dream of Heek's voice urging her to run. She found herself alone in a strange green land, realizing she had entered the mortal realm. Although everything still hurt, she was grateful to be alive. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound behind her. Turning around, she expected to face a fearsome hellhound, but was surprised to find herself face to face with a level 18 dark wolf. Despite the pain and confusion, Salvos readied herself for the fight. With a single fire strike, she defeated the wolf. Annoyed by how easy the battle was compared to her previous fights, She prepared to continue her journey back to the netherworld. As she made her way, she couldn't help but be distracted by the beauty of the creatures she encountered along the way. Butterflies, snails, caterpillars, they were all so different from what she was accustomed to. But the sky puzzled her the most as it changed colors, shifting from blue to orange, then dark, before returning to blue again. As Salvos continued her journey through the unfamiliar realm, she couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. The rustling sounds would always precede the appearance of wolves intent on attacking her. Frustrated by these constant encounters, she fought them off using her fire magic, growing more irritated with each battle. Upon reaching level 19, Salvos came across a wolf pup that had no level indicator. Before she could ponder this strange occurrence, a massive level 30 dark wolf emerged, clearly the leader of the pack. So, is this the last of your pack? That's why they were all such low levels, right? I've already taken care of the rest of your pack, Salvos questioned. Provoking a fierce growl from the wolf, she realized that the wolf was angry with her for killing so many of its pack members. Addressing the remaining wolves, Salvos stated, "Your minions attacked me first, and that's why they're all dead now. I'm prepared to take all of you down, including the level 30 dark wolf." 2 wolves suddenly leaped at her from behind, but she was ready. Without even looking, she swiftly struck them down with her fire strike. The lower level wolves retreated into the grass, leaving only their leader behind. Salvos activated her fire strike skill and focused, keeping an eye on the wolves hiding in the grass, attempting to confuse her. Suddenly, 3 wolves sprang forward simultaneously to attack her, but Salvos managed to defeat them all. Blood splattered around her as she kneeled on the ground, catching sight of another approaching wolf. With a roar, the wolf lunged at her, but Salvos quickly used double step to charge at it, striking with a powerful fire strike. The wolf managed to escape through a shadow portal. Undeterred, Salvos continued her assault on the remaining wolves, almost defeating them all. Unbeknownst to her, the levelless wolf had regained consciousness and stood behind her. Seizing the opportunity, the level 30 dark wolf emerged from the shadow portal and attacked Salvos, biting her arm. Pain shot through her, causing her to scream out. Enraged, she unleashed a fire blast, targeting the dark wolf. However, the flame barely left a scratch. It seemed that this was the only wolf remaining that Salvos needed to defeat, but she wasn't sure if she could win this fight. To her surprise, the levelless wolf lunged at the level 30 dark wolf, biting its neck. Salvos realized that the levelless wolf was helping her. With the level 30 dark wolf wounded and unable to continue the fight, it fled to escape. Salvos was puzzled by the wolf's actions and approached it cautiously. The wolf bowed to her. "Are you grateful?" Salvos asked, understanding that the dark wolves had been a threat to this wolf as well. The wolf nodded in response. "Well, it's no problem. They were attacking me too, so I defeated them all," Salvos said with a wide smile. She asked the wolf if it knew the way to the netherworld, but it only whined in response. Undeterred, Salvos asked if there was someone who might know how to reach the netherworld. The wolf pointed in a specific direction, catching Salvos' attention. "Can I find someone who can help me there?" she inquired. Deciding to trust the wolf's guidance, Salvos set off in that direction. After defeating several more wolves, Salvos reached level 20. Meanwhile, in the depths of the forest, 2 people were having a conversation inside a carriage. They discussed the ongoing invasion of Phallus by the Dusk Wolves and the lack of adventurers willing to confront them. They spoke of the gold-ranked adventurers hired by the Ignoria Empire and Electric Kingdom to defend against the monster attacks, while their armies were engaged in war. It was suggested that any smart adventurer would avoid Nixa and head straight to the kingdom where they were being hired for protection. Unexpectedly, Salvos approached them, seeking directions to the netherworld. Startled by the appearance of an unfamiliar creature like Salvos, the 2 men were taken aback and felt a sense of nervousness. They screamed in terror upon seeing Salvos, especially because of the horns on her head. They immediately concluded that she was a demon. Salvos, however, gave them a wide smile and asked her question once again. Unfortunately, both men had no idea about the place she was asking for. They exchanged frightened glances, then suddenly screamed loudly. Confused by their reaction, Salvos activated her fire strike skill and prepared herself for a fight. But to her surprise, the 2 men quickly ran away, screaming about a demon leaving their carriage behind. Salvos deduced that the men must have thought she was about to attack them, which frightened them into fleeing. She felt disheartened that she didn't get an answer to her question. She glanced at the horse, hoping it could somehow provide some information, but all it did was snort, startling her. Nonetheless, Salvos continued her search for someone who could give her the answer she sought. Every time she approached people with a friendly smile, they screamed and ran away in fear. She started to understand that this was a typical human reaction to coming upon a demon. She questioned whether everyone responded like this when they came upon a monster. She recalled the cultists who had pursued her rather than fled, understanding they had to have understood she was not a scary demon. She met people in this new location who felt terrified just because they didn't understand she presented no threat. Lost in her ideas, she saw something fascinating ahead. A hamlet. She heard a man in the village claiming to a warrior he had seen a demon in the surrounding forest. The warrior claimed to have heard stories of a big demon destroying Fairdale. The man further said he had been chased just outside the village by an imp holding 2 bloody daggers. Finding Salvos, the man gestured her toward the others. Salvos held her blazing daggers and waved at them, grinning broadly. "Demonstrata, a demon is invading Silvergrove. Set off the warning." "Call forth the guild to send explorers," the warrior yelled loudly. "Stop! Hold on! Give up yelling!" "Simply an imp trying to find my way back to Netherworld," Salvos answered, attempting to justify herself. Still, the archers rapidly notched their arrows, preparing for attack. Salvos kept on saying that she was not a wild demon and that she had no intention of harming anyone, but her words went unheard as a sharp spear was pointed right at her. At level 28, the warrior told her to keep her distance. Salvos reassured her by saying, "I won't attack you unless you attack me," raising non-threatening palms. She was about to ask for instructions to the Netherworld when the guard lunged at her, enraged by her continuous babbling. Salvos was compelled to defend herself as the warrior had started the battle and she deftly blocked his strike. Salvos saw danger approaching as she powerfully fired her own counterstrike at the warriors. Realizing the archers were also attacking her, she quickly jumped to evade an arrow en route. She flung one of her flaming daggers, striking an archer in the shoulder without other option. Furious at their disregard for her, Salvos turned to see shields and swords-armed warriors encircling her. Of them, a level 18 mage drive you her eye. He was undercasting a spell with great peril. Salvos quickly jumped over one of the fighters trying to assault her and struck him with a fire strike using her double-step technique. She carried on this move with the other fighters. The mage released his power towards Salvos, who deftly swirled and avoided the spells. She hit the mage with her fiery blade quickly, rendering him disabled. Rising up, Salvos spun her dagger boldly and said, "You're all weak." But another group of fighters and low-level explorers showed up at the scene before she could enjoy her little triumph. Silvergrove needs protection now. Declared a level 14 warrior, whomever kills the demon will get 50 gold coins, so posing a fresh challenge for Salvos. Salvos was overwhelmed in a position of being outnumbered and unsure about the origin of her enemies. The strong magic captivated the mage as she threw another attack at her, causing her to fall to the ground weak and shaking. She was surprised when the mage stayed still following her earlier strike. Despite her frailty, a warrior charged at Salvos managed to deftly sidestep his blow. She followed her gaze to one of the fighters sipping something green, which she knew to be a healing potion. Then the man advised another wounded warrior to sip from the bottle. Maintaining caution, the mage mentioned that Nathan, their level 50 captain, was on his way. Hearing this, Salvos decided instantly to flee. She ran quickly away, using her double step while the warriors pursued. Salvos avoided her attackers deftly as night fell. Panting and injured, leaning against a tree, she felt defeated. She considered why everything in the mortal domain seemed meant to hurt her. She yearned for Heek, her netherworld friend who embraced her for exactly who she was. She vowed to get stronger and force these people to show how she could go back to the netherworld while clenching her fist. Salvos kept her eyes open for anything practical while still drifting. Driven by her need to get stronger not just for herself, but also for her soul friend Heek, she grabbed the chance to challenge a level 24 wild green stag. Her will paid off when she single-handed defeated the green stag. Salvos soon realized that the mortal domain was rife with its own sort of untamed demons or monsters, like the dark wolves, who would attack her without thinking twice. These untamed, devoid of reason, beasts did not identify her as one of their own. She to them was just something to be surmounted. Salvos raised to level 21 after defeating a big insect. Fearlessly confronting several monsters, she quickly raised her level to 23 by killing a gang of golems. Furious with the profusion of rocks around, she kicked a tiny one. The rock flew around until it collided with someone attracted to the cave by the strong noise. Salvos was lost for words when she saw the figure wearing a black cloak. She used her identification ability, but she couldn't find any data about him, not even his level. She became cautious, since the difficulty to determine his level suggested that he was much above her level. Her difficulty to identify his subspecies also baffled her. Tightening his hold on his blade, the man realized Salvos, the imp before him, was behind invading Silver Grove and ruining Fairdale. Salvos furiously sought to explain that she hadn't attacked or wrecked anything as she charged her. She objected when these golems attacked me first, same as the green stag, black wolves, and all those other monsters. Salvos' ability to speak like a human startled the man. Salvos clarified that, while she had been trying to interact with others all along, they had always avoided her. She stated that her only want was to know how to get back to the Netherworld, but none had responded. The man stayed dubious even with her appeals. He swung his sword at Salvos, but she turned away the attack and fired a strong fire strike back. She tried to stab him from behind and found her flaming blade was repelled as he had triggered his shield. Salvos responded quickly, kicking the shield and then launching another fire strike that demolished the shield and sent the man sliding down, so dropping his sword. Salvos grabbed her sword fast as he stood, gripping his head in agony, and attacked the man with it. To scare him, she merged a strong fire strike with her sword blows. Salvos reassured him by pointing the blade at him that, should he lead her to the Netherworld, he would not be harmed. The man responded angrily, accusing her of murder of children and innocent people in Fairdale. Uncertain, Salvos said she had only attacked monsters. She had never hurt anyone. She was thrown back and dropped her sword when the man seized advantage from her confused state and hit her. The man declared he was not a violent person and questioned why he was behaving in such manner. If Salvos was indeed a killer, he thought she could not be let to go free. Driven, he grabbed his sword and attacked Salvos, hoping to hurt her. Salvos closed the distance with her double step and answered with her fire strike. Her ferocious onslaught landed, yet it lacked a fatal force. Salvos grabbed hold of his shirt quickly. The man staggered back, clutching his chest. The man begged for compassion, knowing he had little hope of defeating Salvos. He said he just wanted to go back to the Netherworld, that he had not killed anyone. Weakly smiling, he corrected her and informed her it was actually Fairdale rather than Silverdale. Furious with the man's correction, Salvos kicked him in the neck quickly to knock him out. A system alert showing Salvos that her basic mana manipulating ability had attained level 5 surfaced as this was happening. Salvos stood with the man's sword in hand and saw she had discovered a ring. The man came to, aware he was still alive. Salvos was holding his ring, he also noted. Salvos identified it as a medium-grade item with lesser protection, one that might absorb harm and re-energize over time. Sensing its value to the man, she hesitated to give it back. The man tried to get his ring, but Salvos left him without choice but to stay quiet by threatening him with his own sword. She noted she could have killed him for the experience points, but she decided against it. She cautioned him to inform her whether he wanted to go alive, and asked where the Netherworld was located. Still, the man insisted he honestly knew nothing. Furious, Salvos called him a liar. Nevertheless, he begged her not to murder him, saying he had never visited the demon's realm. Salvos surprised him by smiling broadly and releasing him while warning him that any more strikes would kill him. The man stopped as he got ready to go, and questioned once more if Salvos had indeed not been the one who had wrecked Fairdale. Salvos reassured him she hadn't, which seemed to calm the man. Admitting he wasn't sure he could, he suddenly volunteered to assist her in returning to the Netherworld, eager to try. First furious, believing the man was using her for games, Salvos created a blaze. Startled, the man fast reassured her he was not lying, and he really wished to assist her get back home. Hearing his genuineness, Salvos said she wanted to return to the Netherworld and see her friend. The man, though, wanted guarantees she wouldn't hurt anyone else along the road. Salvos spoke boldly, saying that since she arrived, people had been attempting to murder her, and that she hadn't killed anybody else who hadn't attacked her first. Knowing her trying circumstances, the man promised to help her. Though he doubted he could directly bring her back to the Netherworld, he felt he could locate someone who could. Salvos answered without thinking twice, surprising the man who asked her once more whether she was quite certain. Salvos undoubtedly confirmed her choice. Then the man told her they were going to Hazelberry, a city a few miles north. Though Salvos was excited to start their adventure, the man quickly discovered she knew nothing about which direction north was. Salvos often gets sidetracked in sight of beautiful butterflies as they headed into Hazelberry. Like his laughter and sporadic annoyance, the man introduced himself to Salvos as Daniel and asked her for her name. Happy introductions of herself to Daniel were Salvos. She was startled when Daniel suddenly produced a coat and said it was meant to conceal her look. Called the garment the Cloak of Shadow, it hid her face and provided cut protection as well. Should someone see her true shape, Daniel warned Salvos, they might try to hurt her. He also handed her a necklace with less obfuscation, which could make her appear either as a maid or a warrior. Salvos changed in Daniel's view from a level 23 imp to a level 23 rogue upon donning the cloak and necklace. She understood that Daniel had to have been hiding his rank and subspecies from her by utilizing like objects. Daniel reassured her she would be free from unwelcome attention with her horns and ears buried behind the cloak and her new relics. Daniel said they were near Hazelberry as they kept on their stroll. 2 guards at the gate greeted them as they got at Hazelberry. Daniel said they were independent when the guards questioned whether they belonged to Iron Champions Company. This created demand for 5 silver coins each admittance charge. Daniel paid the cost swiftly, and they were let into the city. Uncertain about the cost, Salvos approached Daniel about it. Adventurers not connected to the Iron Champions Company had to pay an entrance fee, he said. He noted several benefits of working with the organization. Salvos asked about the Iron Champions Company, intrigued, and Daniel said it was a local group of adventurers under most of their supervision. Salvos never stopped wondering what an adventurer was, or asking inquiries. Daniel grinned and remarked he had plenty to say. They came inside an inn, and Daniel started to explain that adventurers were people who undertook perilous activities for profit. To keep their towns safe and pay for living, they destroyed monster lairs and raided dungeons. They had to register with the Adventurers Guild in order to operate as explorers. Still, the guild couldn't handle everything given the volume of adventurers. That's why adventure businesses emerged. Those with enough money launched these businesses, and adventurers paid a membership fee to be part of them. They paid for access to markets, special contracts, and sites. For example, Daniel had agreed to help the Iron Champions Company lower the Stampede Elks population. Salvos, nevertheless, had already attended to the Elks before Daniel arrived. That should cover everything. All right? Have questions? Daniel finished, a little tired from his justifications. Salvos still had questions regarding currencies, the Adventuring Guild, dungeons, inns, and much more, even with his best attempts to explain everything completely. Daniel exhaled and understood he had handed Salvos much to absorb. Although he said he will address another issue the next day, for now he needed some rest and advised Salvos she could also snooze. Salvos, not knowing about napping, got another justification from Daniel. He said he was about to go to sleep and admitted she might not know about unconscious rest. Salvos reminded Daniel of his commitment to help her go back to the netherworld once they were inside their chamber. She kept optimism that he would keep his promise even in their present place. Suspecting Daniel of dishonesty, Salvos got ready to throw her flame. Panicked, Daniel hurried to tell her he was determined to assist her, but the moment for action had not yet arrived. He pledged that upon rising the following day, he would do all in his could to arrange for Salvos to get back to the netherworld. Salvos kept her flame ablaze and kept casting it, although she meant not to hurt Daniel in the room. Rather, she looked about her, using her identification talent to everything including the clock. Though it didn't indicate the time, the ability exposed the truth regarding the object she looked at. Confused by the clock's function, Salvos grew agitated, and finally threw it aside, unintentionally striking Daniel in the head. Salvos and Daniel left the little inn room early morning as the sky grew brighter. Salvos had been bored from spending all night confined. She couldn't even go about at will. Moreover, as Daniel woke up, he ordered Salvos dressed differently for reasons she couldn't completely comprehend. People she saw had particular body areas they needed to hide. Being lazy all night had one benefit. Salvos was able to level her rest talent for the first times. She assumed this greater level helped her to recover more rapidly when resting, even if she wasn't sure exactly what advantages it brought. Daniel questioned suddenly about the happenings of the previous evening as they strolled. Salvos answered, "I kept trying to use my identifying ability on the clock. Though it never indicated what time is, it tells time." Relieved Salvos hadn't run across a major issue, Daniel grinned. They were almost at the Adventurers Guild, he told her, so Salvos should keep close and try not to attract notice. He responded, assuming she wouldn't comprehend for the time being, when she asked whether she should sit down instead. Salvos chose to use her identification talent on Daniel after arriving at the Adventurers Guild and observed the whispering assembly. Finding out he was merely a level 15 warrior stunned her. He seemed to her far more robust than that. Daniel clarified that while he was using a necklace of greater obfuscation, which may hide his level and class, he was really at a higher level. Salvos was annoyed since he didn't explain exactly why he decided to keep his level hidden, saying it was complex. Salvos triggered her recognition ability inside the guild and saw many adventurers of different levels. Salvos tapped Daniel to ask about her return to the netherworld as he was walking toward an attendant. Daniel advised her to keep quiet and not share such things out loud, since it might put her in risk. Holding Salvos' hand as they went, he reassured her he would compile information and try to arrange for her to come back. Then Daniel walked to the receptionist to inquire about the matter, but before he could say anything, someone from behind said, "It's Daniel, back from hunting those stamping elks." But staring at his empty palms, he obviously had failed his purpose. Blake walked up to Daniel, but Salvos blocked his way in between. Blake jokingly called Salvos Daniel's girlfriend, implying that her presence was causing Daniel to act harder. Daniel swiftly refuted the allegation, saying Salvos was not his girlfriend and asked not to involve her. Salvos asked Daniel whether Blake was his friend when Blake inquired about his reaction on it. Declaring his want to be free from Blake, Daniel cut off all ties to him. Blake said Daniel was only boasting about chores he couldn't complete as they got ready to leave. Just as he was mocking, he stopped apparently comprehending something. Growing nervous, Daniel thought Blake had found a demon Salvos was a demon. Blake, though, only chuckled, thrilled to see Salvos was a level 23 rogue rather than just any old chick. Blake's interest aroused him to ask why Salvos hadn't yet joined Iron Champion's company, given they were recruiting actively. He said they had access to unique sites all throughout Silvergrove and Fallisfield, and even gave Salvos the chance to investigate a recently found dungeon. "Would you like to travel with us and access these fantastic experiences?" Inquiring, he's still mute, Daniel watched the exchange take place. Turning to him, Salvos asked whether he really hated Blake. Salvos turned down Blake's offer once Daniel reaffirmed his distaste. Blake, annoyed, grabbed her and questioned her choice of a newbie like Daniel over him. Furious by his actions, Salvos closed her fist and gave Blake a strong blow to his groin. Blake was thrown flying backwards and landed on the ground screaming in agony. Salvos pointed for Daniel to follow her outdoors. Daniel told her about her attack on Blake once they were far from the disturbance. Salvos justified herself, saying she had only done so while Blake was attempting to get her to travel with him, and his actions made her remember someone she hated. Daniel pointed out, "But you said you wouldn't assault anyone." Salvos explained, "I said I wouldn't refrain from attacking. I declared I would not kill anyone. And as far as I recall, you said nothing about anything wrong with injuring them. I gave Blake just a punch. Not even used my claws." Head scratching, Daniel told Salvos she had struck Blake in a sensitive area. A little uncomfortable, Daniel urged her not to strike him in that same area since it would cause great suffering. "I cannot make that assurance. How then do we return to my native nether?" Salvos probed. "We first will go to the library and then to the nearby temple." Comprising enormous volumes of information, the library was a veritable goldmine of literature. Still, despite looking over the several materials, neither Salvos nor Daniel came upon anything that may enable Salvos to go back to the netherworld. Salvos left the library with a dejected look on her face, following their fruitless hunt. Apologizing for not locating the required information, Daniel quickly caught up with her. Though he conceded most of it was already known to him, he had thought the library would include more practical knowledge. "They had nothing for us," Salvos angrily inquired, gazing at Daniel. Visiting the Temple of Hazelberry remained their only choice at last. Salvos stayed dubious as they headed for the temple, thinking Daniel might be lying to her. Daniel claimed that people went to call spirits from temples. Originating from a distant plane of existence and completing contracts for people, he said these spirits resembled demons. Unlike netherworld demons, these spirits came from the spirit plane and were not seen as wicked nonetheless. Salvos entered the temple and was met by a level 31 priest, even though they did not really know what Daniel meant. Warmly greeting them, the priest asked what their reason at the modest sanctuary of fauna. Daniel verified their will to learn more about calling forth ceremonies. The priest said they would be happy to show anyone fascinated in spirits the amazing manner they were linked to and incorporated into their daily life. He wished to serve them satisfactorily even though he explained he was not the main priest. By letting summoners create contracts with their summoned spirits, these temples acted as links between the mortal world and the spirit plane. Salvos watched her surroundings and seemed perplexed by human behavior. Daniel asked her to keep her queries for later. They trailed the priest more, toward the summoning pula tool the sanctuary of fauna employed to help call their souls. Salvos stared at the pool and saw her reflection there. The priest clarified that among the basic components of nature, water was sometimes disregarded by people. Maintaining life depends on it. Only spirits could survive without it. The temple drew ghosts worried about life by means of water as a channel of interaction. Daniel was perplexed about how the gateway worked, and his curiosity drove the priest to be ready to respond to his queries. Before doing this, though, the priest asked about his reason for looking for this insight and whether he had any particular goal in mind. Given that their trip was mostly to assist a demon return to her own planet, Daniel battled to find the appropriate phrases. Salvos was captivated to her own reflection in the lake, even as she listened to the discourse. Her eyes grew wide suddenly when a pink wolf surfaced from the pool. Her priest told her Sakura a level 42 beastkin was the name of the wolf. Fear ran through Salvos, and she naturally wanted to flee. Sakura grinned at her, then mentioned her unusual name. Explaining that Sakura was the guardian spirit of their temple, the priest calmed Salvos. Sakura had been guarding the temple from its founding, even following the death of the priest called upon her. This evidence shows the continuing force of contracts between people and ghosts. Daniel questioned whether he ought to pat Sakura's head like the priest gently did. Sakura loved such gestures, the priest said, so encouraging him. Salvos and Daniel were confused of how to answer. When the priest asked why they desired this information, though. Adventurers were looking to satisfy a contract to kill a raging demon in Fallsteel cities and villages, Daniel said. As they were not yet at a high level, they sought for a substitute for direct warfare. They thought of expelling the monster back into the netherworld. Sakura cut in, saying the circumstances were not as they appeared. She said that a cloak might fool the eyes, but not the nose. Salvos and Daniel grew frightened when she claimed to smell blood and ash. Sakura questioned Daniel's emphasis on creating strategies, even as he mentioned their intention to kill the demon. She cautioned that unless either everything was destroyed or the monster itself was vanquished, it would keep becoming more powerful and wreaking havoc. Sakura sprang away with those eerie words, leaving Salvos and Daniel perplexed by her strange message. The priest said Sakura often spoke in similar ways and apologized for her mysterious character. The priest also expressed his opinion that it seemed improbable for a demon sent back to the netherworld to return. Spirit summoning and demon summoning were really distinct. Demon contracts were temporary, hence the demon had to choose whether or not to go back into its domain. Equipped with these revelations, Salvos and Daniel asked further questions before calling goodbye to the priest. Once more, Daniel apologized to Salvos and carried on saying the spirit had merely talked garbage without providing any helpful information. Still, Salvos seemed to grasp something quite suddenly. She screamed, "Lucerna," and clarified that Lucerna was the demon prowling mankind. When Daniel questioned who Lucerna was, Salvo said he was a bigger demon dispatched by a cultist to kill a monarch or something like. She said she was disoriented at the time, thus she didn't hear the specifics well when called. Hearing this, Daniel yelled, wondering why Salvos hadn't shared this vital information sooner and how knowledgeable she knew about the greater evil. Salvos clarified that she was violently summoned alongside the greater demon, and that in the human sphere, demons could only manifest themselves through calling. Like the netherworld, she had presumed there were other demons here. Feeling let down, Daniel directed his finger at Salvos, blaming her of misleading him and bringing about deaths. Salvos gave Daniel a terrible punch to his crotch before he could complete his sentence, sending him the ground. She claimed she was not a liar, and that she honestly did not know the details of demon calling in the human sphere. Daniel said he was in pain and admitted his fury had overcome him. He understood that Salvos had no responsibility. Rising from the ground, he advised they to immediately notify the Adventure Guild of the circumstances and head there. Shockingly, both Salvos and Daniel Bleak told them when they arrived that the demon attacking humans had been seen close to Maple City and may come there at any minute. And so ends the video. Next, what adventures await Salvos? The next episode will help us to discover. We appreciate you watching.